As for the first time in a decade, the New York Metropolitans go into 3 consecutive games where they find themselves in extra innings. And for the second time, of course, in the 24-hour span, the Metropolitans dominate in the 10th inning and win a wild one once again here in extras in DC by a final score of 7-2. How you doing, everybody? Shout out all you amazing Mets fans, whoever you're a fan of. Welcome back to the latest WardyNYM postgame segment, as we're going to break down everything that transpired and then some on this Metsian matchup as they took down the Washington Nationals big time today. Headline, of course, by WardyNYM, again slipping and falling and fading, no problem, back in the lineup, and he immediately has an impact, just like he did the last time he was in the Mets lineup, carrying this offense and that Metsian loss outside of Mark Vientos. No one had offense in that previous game for Brandon. A couple games later, he is back and making quite the impact. Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, you get a home run, you get a home run. Lots of goods to love there on the offensive end. And Sean Manaea, for the first time this season, pitched 7 strong innings, allowing just 1 earned run. Exciting times here in Metsland, as they, again, for the second time, not the second time this season, but for the first time in a minute now, a second time above 500 by at least a game here. Can they make it 2 games with a 3rd consecutive victory and a series victory in DC against the Nationals tomorrow? We will soon find out. But everybody first chiming in live on a replay, happy to have you all in here. Make sure to smash a like and subscribe button for your boy. Greatly appreciate it. Help us get our next subscriber goal of 30K on the channel. Thank you all so much in advance for doing so. Shout out our amazing sponsor at BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook. Check them out today in the description down below. That way you too get 125% deposit on your first 3 deposits for all your sports betting needs. A little bit about them later in the show, folks. We're going to break down everything that transpired inning by inning. Of course, we are going to get into the key bullpen updates that we have, headlined by Jose Buto, along with the latest updates on the prospect end. And no better man to help do this with me than the co-host of the Mets podcast, great friend of mine, James Shiano, will be joining me shortly into the show here, as we're going to break down, again, everything that transpired in said matchup, folks. But first and foremost, everybody, thank you all so much for taking the time. Hit that like and subscribe button. Spam those W's in the chat, as always, folks. And I see my great members. Vincent, how you doing, LFGM? Tim Welsh, how you doing? Let's go up the list here. Charlie, Daniel Caps, everyone and your mother, Yoshima, Tim Welch, let's see here, Let Go, let's see, John, everybody. If you're watching on replay, let me know your initial reactions down below as well. So the Mets winning this big matchup by a final score of 7-2. We're going to get into all the key highlights here in a second. We're going to get into why the Mets now have 6 players in the MLB top 100 pipeline rankings on the prospect end. So excited about that with my man James here in a minute. And he's going to tell you why Brandon Sproat is just the next big thing here among Mets prospects, especially on the pitching end. AZ with a $2 holla says, another Mets Grimace W put in the books, baby. Absolutely, you love to see it. How you doing, Steven? Happy to have you in your great member as well, everybody. Spam those W's in the chat. Drop them in the comments down below for my replay viewers. And now, folks, let's let it rip with the official WardyNYM post-game jingle. And yes, Baby Shea is bringing us luck indeed. Absolutely. Wardy, how you doing? Wardy Stein looking sick tonight. Thank you. I have another little cool light that I honestly got from Five Below. I'm like, let's just put that right on the logo and make it look my own neon design. It works. We're going to roll with it the same way, folks. Now we're going to roll into our big segment today. I hope you guys enjoyed the jingle as always, folks. But now let's bring in my great friend here and what's going to be an awesome discussion on the Metsies and their latest victory, my man, James Shiano. How you doing, everybody? All right, we're going to do this again in Mets post game as the Metropolitans win in, again, exciting fashion in extras by a final score of 7-2. James, before I break down this ball game inning by inning, please let me know what is your initial reaction to this victory as the Mets have a 3rd consecutive extra innings game.
Initial reaction is resilience. This team keeps trying to find ways to win, even though it doesn't look good for most of the game. They can, again, just find a way to make it happen, which is amazing. And past that, you got to give a lot of credit to Sean Manaea. In a game, the Mets really needed length from their starting pitching. He had his longest start of the season, which is a really nice thing for him to do.
Oh, absolutely. To get length from Sean when that's been one of the main things he's missed all season long is absolutely massive. Huge, huge outing for him. Now let's break this down. AZ with $5 donation says, good to see Shiano back on the channel. He's a GOAT. He absolutely is. But what do you think about the Mets being possibly linked in a trade for Mason Miller? I'm going to put a rain check on that one, AZ. He's already like, what the hell are we talking about, says James. We will answer that towards the end of the show. James and I are under agreement. Not a thing I would expect to happen, to say the least, especially with how David Stearns is operating. The last thing you should expect David to do is probably go out of his way for relievers, let alone ones to that degree, value-wise, where what you're going to have to give up prospect capital. Stearns can find, again, so many different weapons, so much easier than giving a haul for Mason Miller, even though he's fantastic and we know that. But all right, guys, let's break it down. So we talked about, obviously, the key updates on the bullpen. Well, Jose Buto being called up today, in which he was very effective in today's outing with 2 scoreless innings that we're going to break down here shortly. And I definitely want to know all of your initial reactions to that. Again, we saw Sean Manaea was brilliant. We'll get into that a little bit as well. But outside of the bullpen, the other key updates that I have for you all, along with the prospects that we mentioned, is that, of course, Brandon Nimmo initially did not start today's game, was supposed to be in tomorrow's lineup. He's going to be in tomorrow's lineup, but that is after having a fantastic day at the plate. Of course, filling in for Harrison Bader, who unfortunately exited today's game for precautionary reasons as he tried to go for a ball there on the wall, hit it pretty hard, and thankfully I think he's going to be fine, but just a less than ideal situation there. And the final update on the bullpen, Sean Reed-Foley is not returning until after the All-Star break, which really pains me. SRF is one of my favorite relievers in this bullpen right now. He has yet to throw and begin his rehab and all that stuff there in the on the injured list, so we will see him soon, just not yet. Scott with the donation says, Wardy, just so you know, James did some great freestyling while you were getting your shit together. Brandon hitting 102. Absolutely. Again, thank you for that. James, what were you doing? What did I miss?
I was just talking to people. I was like, I didn't know if I was gonna actually be able to stay on the stream or not, so I was giving some Brandon Sprout notes that I had ready and handy to go.
I love that. Thank you. That's probably the best filler possible. Sprout notes, just like that. Appreciate that. And Dave, I apologize, Dave. I did miss your donation, and it won't show me in the chat. So please enlighten me again what happened. We will get into it. Everyone contributed. The fuck did McNeil do? We're not talking about Jeff. We're talking about everyone but McNeil, basically, on the offensive end today.
So bad.
I just don't get me started, please. I can go all day. All right, guys. We have ourselves another Southpaw matchup. We got Hers on the mound for the Nationals, and he was brilliant. Very Mackenzie Gore-esque in what we saw in the effectiveness, the swing and miss, and very Mackenzie Gore-esque in him being pulled out of this game when, if he pitched another inning, you'd have to wonder what the turnout would be. Sean Manaea, of course, with 7 masterful innings, and it starts here that we see in the first inning where Mark Vientos finds himself with a single. Pete Alonso, however, strikes out to end the inning. In the bottom of the first, C.J. Abrams gets on with a quick single himself. However, he would be picked off there at first base. Great pick there. Nice tag by Alonso. And then we would see Mr. Lane get himself a walk. That's all she wrote, however. We then head to the top of the second where we would see Luis Torrens get on with the double. Mind you, JD Martinez was a late scratch to not be in the starting lineup as he had himself a little bit of a sore ankle. No problem for the Mets day as Torrens again has the Mets for his extra base hit and the DH position. In bottom 2, we see Sean Manaea with his first 1-2-3 inning of the day, working those pitches beautifully. In the bottom of the third, we see Nick Senzel, former top draft pick by the Cincinnati Reds, turned now national with an infield single. We see not Michael Young. What's Young's first name?
Jacob
Young, yeah, he's been torching the Mets. Great defense, solid contact hitter, and he goes for a gapper with a double we see here. C.J. Abrams then drives in Senzel with an RBI infield single, and something that we saw a lot of today, unfortunately, was bad fundies by this Mets infield defense. Was absolutely putrid. Just not a lot of things going right here on the defensive end, but it's okay. Thankfully, the Mets still won this one comfortably. Again, one we got to the 10th inning at least. Lindor hesitated where to throw in that situation. CJ being CJ, elite speed down the first baseline. He gets there safe. They're up 1-0. Then we see Joey Meneses, of course, the veteran Mexican, with a hit by pitch and bases loaded, 2 outs, but thankfully, Sean Manaea works out of that jam from there. Strong work by Manaea, again, to keep it a 1-run ball game. Because as we head then to the top of the 4th, Francisco Alvarez, who had some unfortunate luck because his ump had no clue what a strike zone was today. Prior to those frustrations, he did have himself a single that we saw there in the 4th. And mind you, this is the 6th year anniversary that the Mets signed El Troll all those years ago as a Venezuelan prospect. Safe to say that, you know what? It was a good job by the Mets. I think the scouting was decent. Was it not, James?
Yeah, it definitely worked out for that one.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's not like he's a franchise catcher, one of the best in the game already or anything. I don't know. Then the bottom of the fourth, Harrison Bader, again, we would see comes out of the ball game after trying to play through an inning or so ago, hitting the wall. Brandon Nimmo comes in to command left field. Tyrone Taylor shifts then to center field. Tyrone Taylor was fantastic with his defense yet again today. To say he redeemed himself after that unfortunate hop yesterday, which allowed a run to score. Then he makes a great catch in right field. Of course, they're not long after. He made two fantastic catches today, one in right, the second in center field. Tyrone Taylor showcasing the glove that he has done very well this season. We then advance here to the bottom of the fifth, where Young gets on with a walk. Thomas reaches with a Alonso error. Again, goes right through Alonso, unfortunately. So again, between Mark Vientos having a web gem, not in a good way, quite literally the ball gets stuck in his glove, can't throw it. Francisco Lindor with the errors. The fact that Jeff McNeil was the only defender in this infield today that really didn't, actually, no, I'm an idiot. That's not right. Jeff McNeil did not start the game in the infield. He started in left field, which makes a lot more sense. Jose Iglesias was the only one that didn't have hiccups there in the infield. And for that, we appreciate Mr. Jose. Oh my God, what a great job he did in extras in this one. But before we get there, everybody, again, the Mets are trying to tack on. They're not doing much on the offensive end yet. Shamania with a 1-2-3 fourth in the fifth there. Nothing really transpires all that much, except for one run that is driven in, thanks to, unfortunately, Harold Ramirez drives in a run on a fielder's choice there. Again, just not great defense by the Mets, and that does it though. So it's 2-0 now, Nationals lead, as we then head to the top of the sixth, and Francisco Lindor gets all the heater, beautifully placed there, middle in a little bit. He rips that to left. That is going to be, I think, his 14th bomb of the season now for Francisco, which is great to see. Lindor continuing to do great with the bombs that we see there. It's a 2-1 ball game. Mets are just down a run here. 2 outs later, we would see Pete Alonso rip a single. Alonso then, we see hers come out of the game, just like yesterday with Mackenzie Gore, around 6 innings or so. They take him out with the final out, and that would be huge. The Mets face Dylan Floro, the former Miami Marlin turnout national, pitched yesterday, pitched well today, not so much. I mean, actually, so much because Francisco Alvarez strikes out looking, and that was a frustrating at-bat. His first of 2 times striking out looking today, where this ump was doing anything but things proper when it came to his game calling. In the bottom of the 7th, Shamania, again, going into the 7th, you're feeling, okay, the pitch count is looking good. Can Sean work a clean 1-2-3? And he does exactly that. Tyrone Taylor makes a beautiful catch there, right by the wall there in center field to end the inning. Shamania's final line, again, 7 innings of 2-run, 1 earned run ball for Sean, who just has around a 3.67 or so ERA on the season. Definitely want to know your initial reactions in the chat, everybody, to Shamania's brilliance today. In the comments down below to my replay viewers, the same applies there. Great stuff from the big southpaw. In the top of the 8th, we see Francisco Lindor rip an opposite field single. Nimmo with an Oppo RBI single, his first hit of the day, and it wouldn't be his last. The Mets are really starting to tack on here. They tie this ball game thanks to Nimmo's heroics once again. Again, we saw Brandon Nimmo just a couple games ago. The last time he was in the lineup, we saw James. Again, he was the first hit of the day, first run scored. It was game-tying home run. It was game-tying double. What didn't Brandon Nimmo do in that last matchup? He just couldn't get us the victory. He tried. His back was hurting from carrying this team, but it wasn't enough. Thankfully, though, Brandon with the offensive heroics today, and the Mets reward him with a victory in this one. As we see then on the offensive end, we saw Lindor and Nimmo, as I mentioned. So let's get into the pitching end. Jose Butto gets the call here in the 8th, and he gives up a single after 1 out to Joey Meneses. The ball got stuck, unfortunately, in Vientos' glove, as I just mentioned, but thankfully, Vargas for the Nationals has been such a help for the Mets this series. Terrible day yesterday. Horrendous with his double plays. A bunt down the, trying to go down to first base when he had a runner in scoring position. What are we doing here? Vargas with another double play ends the inning unscathed there for Jose Butto. Francisco Alvarez strikes out looking in the top of the 9th. In the bottom of the 9th, we see James Wood, an electrifying young talent. The 21-year-old gets on base with a walk. However, he's caught stealing because he couldn't stay on the bag. Great throw from Alvarez there to second base. Great job there also to keep the tag on him as well. Huge out. Again, if they get a runner's in scoring position there, the Nationals probably win this ball game. Garcia then reaches on a Lindor error, his 8th of the season somehow. Yes, I'm just as shocked as you are, but that's how bad the Mets infield defense was today. And then we advance to extra innings where, oh my God, Jose Iglesias rips an opposite field RBI single to give the Mets the lead. He is now 8 for 11 with runners in scoring position this season, James. Just let that marinate for a second. The
It's crazy.
34-year-old veteran infielder that you paid how much this offseason, David Stearns, has given you more production than your everyday second baseman has all season long for the most part. Insane stuff. We love Jose, OMG indeed. So he gets the offense started, and the Mets would continue to roll from there as Brandon Nimmo rips an opposite field RBI double to increase the Metropolitan lead. Vientos finally gets in on the offense because of course he does. If Marky V doesn't have an RBI single, he's not having a good day. He did today, however, and that makes it a 5-2 ball game. Ben Gamble comes in as a pinch runner, steals second base, stays on the bag a little awkward. He's okay, and Pete Alonso drives him in. Alonso with a bomb of his own, of course. How many bombs does Alonso have now this season, James? Any idea
18,
off the top of your head?
18 on the year.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was thinking it was 17 or 18. I didn't know which one. 18th bomb this season already for Polar Bear Pete. That opens the floodgates. It's 7-2. Daniel Nunez comes in. He gets the job done, the bomb the 10th, and the Mets win this one by a final score of 7-2. James, thank you so much for the $5 holla. James in the chat says, have to think next roster move sends Stewart down. Stewart has more of a limited role by the day on this team, which you wouldn't think initially with Starling Marte being out with injury, but DJ really hasn't helped his own for the times that he has been out there. He's defensively liable, to say the least. He's really a standalone DH at best. You know, of course he can handle right field, but it's very wishy-washy, and the defense are going to get there. I don't think that's an outlandish take at all, James Albo. Thank you so much for the donation. James Shiano, what do you have to say about that?
I think probably, but the fact that, I don't know, I think he could probably give a little bit more than Gamble. So maybe he stays in the team than Gamble. I don't know. As bad as DJ Stewart keeps getting into these cold funks, the team continues to give him opportunities because they've seen him get hot and they've seen what the offensive ceiling looks like compared to other players, especially corner outfielders in the 40-man roster. The Mets have bad outfield depth. I think if Drew Gilbert was healthy this whole year, he'd probably be on this team and producing right now rather than either Stewart or Gamble. But I don't know. It seems like they're going to keep giving chances, especially if Harrison Bader winds up in the IL now, which seems like a possibility.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. Man, I miss Drew Gilbert so much. He, of course, is expected to return there in Syracuse around mid-July. He's a top outfield prospect that a lot of us Mets fans are very hyped up, to say the least. Someone in the chat says, I think Priest has been banned. Priest hasn't been banned. I don't know where someone said that. James, you don't know, there's a diehard fan follower in here named Priest on Plains. He loves his shit on Lindor. He hasn't in a while because he's been playing great. There's usually a lot of back and forth when he's in the chat, and he's missing. So people are wondering, where the hell is he? So they're like, did he get banned? What happened? And Dave in the chat here says, no hits, can't even bunt, trade him already. I didn't even make note of the fact that McNeil quite literally popped up a bunt. He couldn't even move the runner over. Like, if that isn't low bar McNeil, I don't know what is. Thank you for that donation, Dave. I appreciate that. But all right, again, thank you guys for the donations. We appreciate that. Let's continue to break down this ball game, James. So we saw the Metsies, of course, ball out once again after facing a strong southpaw starter, this time in Hers here for the Nationals. What do you make of the Mets' lack of ability to hit both himself and Gore the past 24 hours, and kind of more so of a Mets back in May, not in the sense of the losing, but in the sense of not doing all that much against starting pitching, but as soon as the bullpen comes in, they tend to pounce? Do you think that this is something we can expect more of in the month of July, or is this just one of those things where, you know, they couldn't read these southpaws?
It's weird because Hers is a fine pitcher, and he was better than I think in basically every other start he's had in this game. And it's also weird, this series, 4 starting pitchers, 4 lefties. It's a complete anomaly. The Nationals themselves have a 5-man rotation, 4 left-handed pitchers. It's very bizarre, but it was the strikeouts that really bothering me in this game. Alvarez being the main culprit of that with a big fat golden sombrero. I can never be upset with our young king, but also they were nibbling on him. And he just didn't want to go for those pitches. He's been doing so well in his pitch selection. So I understand the frustration, especially from his end, from not chasing those. But I mean, you got to tip your cap to Hers. Weird though that Hers comes out of the game, and then the Mets actually have their big rally once again in 10th inning against another lefty in Robert Garcia. The team's been great against lefties this year, better than lefties against righties, something that's been weirdly an Achilles heel against this team for years now. And I think a lot of that started with Vientos and, of course, J.D. Martinez coming into this lineup, and Alvarez of late being these true lefty mashers. Sometimes the other pitcher just has your number. You tip the cap, and hopefully it's a game like this, you get to the bullpen after.
Yeah, and I'll say in the case of Gore especially, the Mets have pieced him up a little bit over the past year, but he's also had his success against this Mets team when facing a lot
So
of the
good.
same core group. You know, he's disasterly. When he was first announced in that trade, along with CJ, along with James and everyone, I was most concerned with Mackenzie Gore because I know how dominant Southpaws can be against this Mets team. Now you're telling me a young electric one in the case here, Mackenzie Gore. I'm not liking this in that Juan Soto trade, and I think that Juan Soto trade is going to kick the Mets' teeth in for years to come that we're already starting to see. You just got to hope that the Mets, of course, have the better half of the rivalry between the two for the foreseeable future. But all right, let's talk a bit on the pitching end, James, because obviously for the people that don't know you, you take a lot of pride and passion in really evaluating these Mets pitchers. And to see Sean Manaea come out today and, of course, work that sweeper as well as he did, work those pitches, induce those ground ball outs, what would you say was the biggest reason for his success today? And do you think that this is sustainable for someone like him to give us 7 innings, or is this just more of an anomaly of a start for a guy who's a 5 and die pitcher?
I think probably Sean Manaea completed 6 innings. Then as a bonus, guess the last time he completed 7 innings.
Okay, the last time he completed 6 innings, he's done that this season, hasn't he?
He has done it this season, yes.
Yeah,
I think 2 or 3 this season.
Yeah, he's done 2 or 3 for sure. Hasn't done it 7 once this season. 5 innings, he's done more often than not.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have a date? Give me a date. Give me a month and a day. Pick one randomly.
Okay. The last time for which one? Tell me.
6. Just give me 6.
Okay, the last time he gave us 6 innings? I'm going to go with May 14th.
It was May 13th. You're on the money.
Holy
there.
shit.
Weirdly, the day.
There was no homework there, James. None.
That's incredible. I give you a lot of credit for that because that was weirdly the game that Edwin blew in the last inning, the check swing that wasn't a check swing, and extra innings against the Phillies. And then for him to complete 7 innings, you have to go all the way back to last September with the Giants against the Dodgers. And the last time he completed 7 innings before that, you have to go back to 2022, August 2022, oddly, against these same Nationals. So I don't think that length is something that we can expect from Manaea, but something he's done recently over the last month I think has helped him a lot is reintroduce a cutter that he was throwing sparingly early in the season. He likes mixing it around, especially low and into right-handers. It gives it like a little foil to his two-seamer and his sweeper to kind of pitch that works in between them that he can, in terms of velocity and in terms of movement. And it was effective in this one. It was his actually second most thrown pitch. It had 5 called strikes, 2 swings and misses. He was taking a little bit off in this one and getting some more movement on it compared to the rest of the season. He was only coming in by 87, usually throws it around 88, 89, sometimes getting up to 90, but kind of using that pitch, being like a little baby slider, to come in a little less than the sweeper against a very righty-heavy lineup, as he always sees. Nice game. Wouldn't expect 7 innings very often, but really nice for him to do this as the bullpen needed it so badly.
Oh my God, this couldn't have came at a better time. Well, I feel like we say that every time we get 6 or 7 innings from these Mets starters. But seriously, with how taxed the bullpen has been, with Edwin Diaz still unavailable until at earliest July 6th, he can return from his suspension. When you still have guys like Matt Festa in this bullpen, which is just outrageous in my opinion, can we please enter one of Max Kranick or Eric Orzi? I did hear reports earlier today that the Mets are considering Eric Orzi either before or after the All-Star break. So just some food for that there for Mets fans that are curious what they're going to do with their bullpen configuration outside of guys like Fujinami and Bryce Montes de Oca that we talked about briefly. And I'm going to ask for your thoughts on them here in a second, James. But for Sean here, to get this outing was not only massive, but if you're David Stearns, you got to be happy, right? Because this is a Mets team right now that's rolling into the trade deadline, expecting to both buy and sell with, I shouldn't say overwhelming abundance of starting pitching help, but should Kodai Senga return, of course, his rehab assignment officially begins tomorrow. Christian Scott's on the bump tomorrow too. Exciting times in Mets land, baby. Looking for that series victory. You still obviously just brought up Buto. You have Scott now, so you're waiting on Senga. There is room to part ways with 1 or 2 starters at minimum, and even if you deal with an injury, you know that you're going to be okay for the most part. Now, I've been under the belief the Mets are actually going to look to potentially acquire at least a starter, not necessarily anyone crazy, but even if they trade away, there are a couple that I think are feasible. If you're going to go for obviously a short-term option, Eric Fetty sticks out like a sore thumb because David wanted him so bad in the offseason. But when you look at guys right now that could be dealt from the Mets, I look at the 2 southpaws right now, and Jose Quintana and Sean Manaea. What do you say a start like today just helps boost the stock of Manaea's trade value, or is this kind of going to make things a little bit more difficult for David Stearns in pondering what to do with this rotation over the next month?
I think yes and no. I'd almost be surprised if the Mets don't trade any of these pitchers, and I sadly would have to lump Luis Severino into the mix. I know Mets fans don't want to hear that, but you can't, especially as a general manager, as a guy like David Stearns, you don't let short-term outcomes like affect what you know these players are. And Luis Severino, while he's done a lot this year to be great, he's still not striking batters out, and he's still very injury prone as he always is. Very similar to Sean Manaea, especially the guy who just cannot get past fifth inning. Usually did it today, did a great job, but I think you still can't count your chickens though. We've been really waiting on Kodai Senga to come back for basically a full month now, and it's been setback after setback. So I'd like to see him get through a rehab assignment, which will likely be the full max 30 days a rehab assignment is allowed to be. So there's going to be some time on that, and then from there we're just going to kind of wait and see what offers roll in. But I'd still be surprised if they don't move one, just considering they have Budo, Scott, and hopefully Kodai Senga, and even old friend Joey Lucchesi down there to possibly mix in, fill some innings. But I truthfully don't even think David Stearns knows exactly what's going to happen at the trade deadline. Like, yeah, you have to see what offers you get, and you play there as it lies.
Yeah, no, you're right. And when it comes to the trade deadline, it wouldn't be shocking if the Mets are fairly quiet all the way up until we reach there, because it's all about playing the market, as you mentioned. This is something that David's done very well in the past with the Brewers. And even when you look at when he traded guys like Josh Hader, it's not like he got a terrible return and how it's blossoming since then, right? Obviously, it hurt the clubhouse a little bit at the time. Hader wasn't a pending free agent yet. He still had at least another year or so of control in his contract. So that's what really induced the controversy. But when you look at as a whole, what David Stearns has done in previous years there's a world where the Mets could easily not only potentially eat some salary of guys currently on the roster if they want to cut dead weight. I think there's a certain second baseman that has something to say about that. And then you also have who you may want to acquire for the sake of maybe a better trade. Maybe you do eat salary on a dead contract because you're like, you know what, I can do that right now. We have more money to work with, especially with the way we spent this offseason. I think a lot of things are definitely in the realm of possibility for the Mets, but it's going to be really fascinating to see in the coming weeks, as we get to middle July when things are really starting to be lukewarm now in the rumor mill, what exactly is happening there. They got to add, I think they're going to add relievers, but I wouldn't even be shocked if they don't do anything crazy there because, and this is a perfect transition now. I know that we're talking about this Mets game, but it's hard for me not to ask your personal opinions on both Bryce Montes-Dioca and Shintaro Fujinami because Fuji, I think to a degree how I feel about him. I've been a huge fan of his going back to when he was in the MPB. While the Mets assigned him over a year ago, they didn't. Trevor May spoke glowingly of him, of course, former teammate of his when I spoke with Trevor this past offseason, and we all know the talents there with both these guys. It just has to do a lot with control and confidence, something that we saw, of course, Edwin Diaz struggle with earlier this season. So between Montes-Dioca looking great in his rehab, working himself back now in Syracuse with the Mets, and then Shintaro Fujinami with 8 pitches, all strikes, including a pair of strikeouts there with the Rummel Ponies in his rehab assignment, what do you make of these two towering right-handers and the potential impact that they have in this bullpen for David Stearns and the Mets?
I think there's a lot. The big thing with bullpen movement on a roster is that the players who are going to come up in a bullpen are going to have to be in your 40-man roster. That's how you shuffle guys with options in and out. And that's why we're seeing Tyler J. That's why we've seen Grant Hartwig. And that's why we've seen Matt Festa. And that's why now we've seen Ty Adcock. Who I actually thought really nice stuff. I actually excited to see if Ty Adcock
he's sneaky good. Another guy with a nice slider, David Stearns.
I'd like to see him stick around his bullpen. But Fuji is on the 40-man. Dioka is not. And I wish I had data on these guys, but just sadly I don't because they've been doing their rehab assignments thus far in AA, where we get data on these guys in either low A or triple A. So we're going to get that on Montes-Dioca in the coming days, which is exciting. But all I have on Fuji is that I think you mentioned it before, 8 pitches, 8 strikes in his rehab assignment tonight. And again, he is on the 40-man roster. On the 60-day IL, so I think there would have to be a 40-man move to do that. But I see they haven't moved Drew Smith to the 60-day IL yet. So they have some openings there. But you're probably just going to continue to see, if not Fujinami, more Cole Sulser, more Josh Walker, more Danny Young. Like those are going to be the moves. Even tomorrow, Christian Scott comes up. I'm curious who they're going to wind up optioning. But I mean, I guess that Tyler J went down today for Budo. So I don't know. So it's this game within a game that these executives have to play that is so past like the understanding of us fans always that it's just these tiny little chess pieces moving around a map. Who you can move, who you can do it, and then if you are ready to give up a guy on your 40-man roster, either you try to push someone out in a trade quickly, or then you actually have to designate someone for assignment, possibly lose what you think could be a valuable asset. So it's very careful. But I think in terms of next guys we're going to see, it will be weirdly enough because it looks so bad early, but now it's coming on fast. Probably Fuji, and I'm kind of excited about that because he throws over 100 miles an hour.
Yes, I'm ecstatic about Fujinami. As long as he doesn't quite literally walks 6 straight batters, I think we're going to be in for an exciting time. And yes, Fujinami, we don't know what we're getting yet. The same way I was not a lover of Jake Diekman signing. I know Mark was, but here's the thing, Mark, and Mark knows it. When you have the walk rate every year the way Jake does, he's just so Jekyll and Hyde. Shintaro Fujinami, of course, hasn't established himself fully at the MLB level. Had his best outing, funny enough, of his MLB career against the Mets with the Baltimore Orioles last year, where he pitched a perfect inning. It was beautifully done. That was frustrating, no less. But Shintaro is one of these guys that has everything in the arsenal that you would look for to be a prime setup man for Edwin Diaz. That's really the peak of Shintaro, guy I expect the Mets to consider just when the timing's right. Because as you mentioned, all the configuration with the roster implementation is important. Like guys like Matt Festa being the bullpen right now should not be happening. That's why I would love to see Max Kranick given an opportunity, because he's been utilized basically 2 innings every time he's been out there so far in AAA Syracuse since, coming off the IL earlier this season. But Eric Orsi has been kind of having a bounce back year as well. So whoever they decide to go with for the next bullpen move, I'm fine with. But I just think Mets fans, this was kind of the whole point of my initial story here with this bullpen is, don't be surprised if the Mets really don't go crazy on the bullpen front the way that you might think that they will, because we still have internal options that have a lot of potential behind them. Does that mean that they shouldn't address bullpen? No, they should. But all I'm saying is don't expect them to say, give up some key prospects right away for, like David Robertson, for example, the haul the Mets got from the Marlins last year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect those kind of things, even in a rental situation. So James, I got to ask, staying on the topic here of the game, on the offensive end, what stood out the most to you in this 7-2 victory, and why?
I mean, it's definitely a combination of Lindor and Nimmo, who's become one of the best and most feared top 2 guys in the order in all of baseball. Just the way that they drove this entire offense to get, first of all, this game 2 extra innings, then to give the Mets a chance to win at the end. Lindor with the solo home run to have the only scoring off DJ Hers, have 3 hard hit balls in this game, another double. So weird that there's a game for Francisco Lindor where it's like he has probably the worst defensive game he's had as a Met. He had that weird double clutch on the Abrams ground ball in the first inning. Then he had another one in the 3rd inning that allowed the run to score because he was looking at the plate. And then he booted that ball. I think it was in the 9th when Budo was on the mound that allowed someone to reach base. I think it might have been Jacob Young. But then to do everything he did with the offense, it's kind of the exact player that a lot of the curmudgeon Mets fans want Francisco Lindor to be. Hit the crap out of the ball, and then they don't care about his defense, so you guys got to see that firsthand. And then Nimmo. This is the second time this year that Nimmo has had an injury, missed the beginning of a game, and then come in late and been the hero, because he had
He's
the rip
such a
thing
dog
like a month ago. And Brand Nimmo right now, you look at it, the stats haven't updated for the evening yet, but in terms of National League outfielders, he is near the top in OPS. He's near the top in WAR. He is near the top in home runs. Like, he has literally been one of the best outfielders in National League this year. It'd be a federal crime for him not to be at the All-Star game in Arlington. A complete injustice for him not to make his first All-Star team this year.
Not only with Lindor and the production that he's been having, but Nimmo, it's this clutchness. Obviously he had that stretch of not looking too hot in the 3-hole. The Mets put him in the 2-hole, was putrid the first day there, worked on his swing a bit, and I know that he has adjusted a bit about his swing thanks to JD Martinez and some of his pregame work. Similar to the team as a whole, obviously using weighted metal bats that we've seen in BP that are helping them find a little bit more success. Things that have been recently reported on. That's been really cool to see how JD Martinez has impacted this Mets offense for the better, more so on the coaching end than even the hitting end. But Nimmo's ability to not only go opposite field, but he just looks so comfortable now in this 2-hole and is really adopting what it means to be as a 2-hole hitter in this lineup, with Francisco Lindor being one of literally the best players in all the National League since batting leadoff, since the ovation. Like, we can talk all we want about Lindor right now with his 759 OPS and a 249 average, but take the context of that sample size. If we exclude the first couple weeks of the season, the first month, again, as we did back in 2021, Francisco Lindor is having yet again another fantastic season. Defensively wasn't there, but offensively did what he needed to do today, and that's fine. We are going to give him the pass because he's so few and far in between with those defensive hiccups usually. And Brandon Nimmo stood out. Mark Vientos, though, man, batting the 3-hole for the first time, 2 for 5. Love that with the RBI. He just, again, He's not fazed by the pressure whatsoever, and that's been a huge thing for Vientos that we have seen this season. Alvarez didn't have as much luck, but to see these guys, the impact that they've had, even when they're back-to-back in the lineup, something they were originally supposed to be today, prior to the JD Martinez, last-minute scratch, in which he was actually scratched funny enough because of his cleat. I don't know if you saw that. That's actually hilarious. Yes, for those that don't know, JD Martinez said his ankle is sore because he tried a new cleat that didn't quite fit right. I mean, I know what it feels like to breaking cleats, so I guess I understand, but it's still hilarious. His shipment from Adidas was delayed, so he bought new cleats on Amazon. Anything you want to add in regards to that?
Apparently, I had a text from a cousin, not corroborated, but in our Mets group chat. He said that apparently JD likes to wear new cleats every few games. So this was him doing a cleat change. So it's the opposite of breaking cleats. It seems like he likes a stiff cleat. And they said he got this one off Amazon to make his ankle.
That's
also
crazy.
I can't believe that point that JD introduced weighted bats to the Mets and the coaches didn't. That's a crazy black mark on the Mets hitting coaches.
Weighted metal bats. It's a whole thing.
Weighted bats have become a big emphasis of training hitters in the last few years. I don't know who started it, but I know that Driveline's big on it. JD's big on it. I know the Baltimore
That's where he got
themselves.
it from. He got it from Driveline over a year ago.
This is the Orioles thing. They like to get these contact-oriented hitters in college and train them with weighted bats to increase their bat speed through the minor leagues. That's how they create these mutants at the major league level. But it's almost a tiny bit concerning if the Mets weren't even considering doing that beforehand.
I think the most concerning thing is that there's two men on salary by the names of Eric Chavez and Mr. Jeremy Barnes, who I'm sure, or Danny Barnes, who I'm sure are great people. Whichever. Is he Jeremy or Danny? I get him confused. Jeremy, I'm sure fantastic people, but you're left wondering more and more just how much of an impact have they had on this Mets offense when JD Martinez quite literally, again, a couple weeks into his Mets tenure, basically said, I want to be more involved on the hitting approach. So that's exactly what he did, and the numbers back it. I mean, we have to give this guy a blank check as soon as he retires, as long as he has interest in staying in the game of baseball, because it's working. And I think it's going to continue to work because he's a hitting savant. Again, doesn't matter if he's 40 years of age, he's still going to get the job done. Dave with the $2 donation real quick says, very happy with Vientos becoming a star. He is, and this is not a fluke now with both Vientos and Alvarez. And I'm just going to pan here for everybody that are watching live here on YouTube, as you take a look again on the hitting numbers today. And of course, this is the live in which the game ended, not how it started. So bear that in mind. I'm going to relay them here shortly, everybody. But Vientos and Alvarez just continue to thrive, and these are now homegrown talents that are becoming the face of the team in many ways, along with the guys who have been here in this core, headlined by Pete Alonso, headlined by Brandon Nimmo, and of course there in Francisco Lindor. But Lindor, again, to recap the offense today, everybody, 2 for 5 with an RBI and that home run, 249 average, 759 OPS for Cisco. Nimmo, of course, the clutch gene himself, 2 for 3 that we saw with the double and the 2 RBIs. Fantastic stuff. 251 average, 824 OPS on the season for Brandon. Harrison Bader was 0 for 2 before exiting today's game. He's at 270 and 724 for his clip. Mark Vientos, Swaggy V, 2 for 5 with the RBI, a 305 average and a 935 OPS. Ben Gamble did have a run scored, though, as he, of course, stole the second base later in the ball game, and then was the scoring run thanks to the Alonso home run. And speaking of Alonso's home run, 2 for 5, as we mentioned there, again, looking fantastic with his 18th home run this season. Ripped that one at 2 RBIs, 247 average, 810 OPS on this season for Alonso. Then we see Francisco Alvarez 1 for 5 with 4 strikeouts on the day, believe it or not, but this certainly didn't help the Mets any stretch of the imagination. 301 average and 878 OPS on the season. Luis Torrens 1 for 4 with the double and a pair of strikeouts, 303 average, 997 OPS. We take that from our backup catcher. That's awesome. Tyrone Taylor 0 for 4 with a run scored, 223 average, 631 OPS. Increased playing time, lower average you're going to get with Tyrone, but he, of course, has those big hits in him still. Jose Iglesias 1 for 4 there that we saw with the RBI double, 388 average, so he's no longer a 400 hitter. Oh, we're going to cry about it. So no one, 974 OPS. We love ourselves some, oh my God, Iglesias. Jeff McNeil, more like Jeff McNope, 0 for 4, 213 average, 572 OPS. Still a bottom 5 OPS among all eligible hitters in Major League Baseball. So glad to see he's getting the continued playing time, obviously. Surely no sarcasm. Everybody, before we get into my man James, and we're going to talk a bit more on not only necessarily the pitching end, but especially on the prospect end to wrap up our live show, let's take a quick word with our amazing sponsor on the channel that many of you guys and gals know very well. And in case you don't know, listen up now. It's thanks to our amazing friends at BetUS that has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Listen up.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Alrighty, guys, here we go. Again, if you guys haven't been tailing Wardy's nightly picks, you should start now. We have been on an absolute heater. We went 2 for 2 in our UFC 303 picks. We went 2 for 2 in our parlay the other night. Entering tonight as well, our matchups that we initially had. I did bet on the Mets. I did have Mets outright to win, I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to think of the other matchups that I had as well. Heading into this one, I think I doubled up on the Brewers or Rockies, so I have to check the score there with them. But ultimately, we've been doing really, really good in our bets lately, everybody. And if you want everything when it comes to sports betting, but you want to have a connection with the Metsies here, do it with our great friends at BetUS, the official sponsor of the WardyNYM platform. And as you guys and gals can see here, the Mets are the money line favorite tomorrow at -128 there with Chris and Scott on the bump. Oh, that's juicy. Oh, I love that. I don't want to be too biased. I really haven't been biased at all with my picks this season because I don't trust the Mets more often than not up until this past month with their newfound success. We got the White Sox Guardians. Guardians were part of my parlay yesterday as well. Love the Guards there in this matchup against the White Sox for obvious reasons. We got the LA Angels there in that matchup. That's an interesting one. Reds, Yankees, Marlins, Red Sox, who I like the Red Sox there for sure. We're going to go Red Sox, and we are going to go Guardians for our 2-pick parlay, again, for tomorrow's slate of games. Feel free to tail this should you wish, everybody. But again, you don't have to. Just make sure you bet responsibly if you're going to bet with our great friends at BetUS. And this 2-pick parlay is $10 to win $17.23. So again, good luck to everybody. And again, shout out to our amazing sponsor, as always, at BetUS, who has you covered with everything under the sun sports betting needs. And stay tuned because we're going to be doing awesome giveaways with them again soon, as we just gave away a Brandon Nimmo jersey to one lucky Metsian Mets fan, all just for signing up to BetUS and send me a screenshot of proof that they're betting. That simple, that easy. Be on the lookout for more giveaways just like that. But now to hop back in this ball game, hop back into talking with my man James. James, on the pitching end, is there anything that you would like to add with Jose Butto and what we saw with him today? Daniel Nunez, anything to touch on, or should we just dive into these prospects? You tell me.
I'll briefly go with the pitchers and stuff. I love Jose Butto, big Jose Butto guy. If anyone listens to Mets Up is officially a Jose Butto podcast.
Yeah, we love the butt for sure.
Love the butt. It was not that encouraging with adding, though. The same issues that persisted with Butto when he was sent down a month and a half ago were still there. He's just nibbling. He's kind of afraid to put pitches in the zone. The pitch charts were everywhere. He didn't throw anything that was either completely on an edge or 4 inches off the plate. And he only threw 25% of his pitch in the strike. So you're not going to get away with beating major league hitters unless you have very, very nasty stuff. Butto stuff is good. It's not very, very nasty. He's going to have to get more comfortable throwing especially his sinker and his fastball in the strike zone. That Daniel Nunez, could you imagine if I told you 2 months ago Daniel Nunez would be the most trusted reliever in the Mets bullpen?
It'd be like, who? He's a veteran reliever. He was I'm pretty sure the Giants picked him up a couple years ago for the Rule 5 draft. They dropped him. The Mets pick him back up, and he just becomes, again, this Swiss Army knife in the bullpen.
It's also so not fake. He's quite good. The 96, 97, 98 mile an hour fastballs, the nasty slider. He was everything. And also just great. It was great. It wasn't like exactly due to Francisco Alvarez, but throwing out James Wood after the leadoff walk in the 9th inning was massive. That was huge. And that's a very good chance that comes around scores, even if he doesn't reach second base there. And then last thing before we move to prospects, I just want to shine some light on some amazing adjustments that Mark Vientos has made this year compared to last year. It's made him this much better. He was either guessing, he had to guess for the breaking ball, and then he'd miss it. Pitcher was taking advantage of him, especially in the strike zone. He's made a good adjustment this year to be quicker with his hands, get to velocity better, and he's been so much better at swinging at just the right pitches. There's a great metric called Seager that Robert Orr at Baseball Prospectus invented last year. It's called Seager for Corey Seager, and it's about your selective aggressiveness, how much you're swinging at the pitches you should be swinging at and taking the pitches you should be taking. And the whole key of that is taking pitches just on the outsides of the zone you can't do much with, but that if you make contact with them, they'll be weak contact, but swinging at the pitches in the heart of the zone, down the middle, around the big juicy part of the plate that you want to hit belt high. Last year, Mark Vientos was in the 24th percentile of all major leaguers in that. So that means 75% of major leaguers were better than Mark Vientos at swinging at the right pitches. This year, he's in the 83rd percentile of that. That means only 17% of hitters swing at the right pitches. His profile, this power right-handed hitter role that suddenly Vientos is just filling, and he's filling it super well, and he's filling it in a very sustainable way. So that improvement in swing decisions is making me really, really confident in Vientos, and he's still swinging and missing a lot. So there's probably even still some upside on what he could do as a hitter, which is crazy to say because he's been one of the most productive players in the National League since he got this job full time.
For Vientos being as much of a free swinger power slugger that he is, to your point, yes, he has been fantastic with his pitch selection. And it's crazy you referencing those numbers, how much of a jump he's made positively in a short period of time versus a guy like Brett Beatty, who again had all the keys, everything was handed to him. You trade Eduardo Escobar last year, just can't get it going, doesn't understand how to lift a baseball at the MLB level. This season, early brilliance that we saw, but not sustainable. I hope Brett can really establish himself and maybe even be a second baseman for the Mets in the near future if they're going to continue to give him reps there. Again, it's a fairly low bar outside of Jose Iglesias, obviously, even if you go platoon here, I should say. But in the case of Vientos, yes, he's going to have his defensive hiccups, but it's that offense that we saw yet again today, which helps make up for it. And that's the big difference. You know, I think right away of an incapable defender at the hot corner, I think of JD Davis, right? You think of him right away. You think, okay, when he first bursted on the scene, the power was there, the clutch ability was there. You want him starting over Todd Frazier as much as humanly possible because the Todd father probably shouldn't have been here. I'm not a big Frazier fan. I know some are. I didn't find myself in that category during his time with the Mets. But then once JD finally gets consistent playing time, the glove isn't there. Then he hurts his hand and everything kind of spirals from there. Now we enter Mark Vientos, who finally looks like the most established third baseman that we have had since David Wright, and his ability to impact this team on the day-by-day, night-by-night. Vientos' power alone is, again, giving us a reason why we're not missing a Jorge Soler signing, who's been very up and down with the Giants, which isn't overly shocking, given, you know, it's very hard to hit bombs out of Oracle, as we know, if you're not named Barry Bonds himself. So this is a Mets team now built with Mark Vientos, built with Francisco Alvarez. This core group right now, we are looking at guys that might become quite literally some of the best hitters in their respective positions. They quite literally are in that category as is, or the past month plus, but should this continue, the depth in this lineup is just absolutely obscene, James. I don't think I've actually seen an offense quite like this in my young Mets fandom. Nothing's really touched this when you really grasp and understand how deep this lineup is when everyone's healthy and on full cylinders. Would you agree?
I mean, this was the recipe. This was the way the Mets were supposed to win games this year. It was starting pitching depth that was good enough. It was a bullpen that would be hot and cold, and it was a lineup that was supposed to carry them. And now I didn't think there was a point where they'd ever had the most runs in baseball over this long a period of time, over a month. But when Lindor, the three guys at the top are doing what they're supposed to do, is the fact that JD Martinez was brought in here and could do what he's always done, and Alvarez and Vientos taking their steps. It's just, it's beautiful right now. And this team is going to go as far.
The next closest team is absurd. And then to kick off just extra innings the past 24 hours, you know, you start extras this year only having, 9 runs throughout your first how many games. Now the Mets do how many? I think 11 now in the past 24 hours. And just the 10th inning alone, it's ridiculous, but we're here for it. Look, if you're going to give me heart palpitations, at least let me be happy before I go to bed. And the Mets are at least doing that with these sweaty yet exciting victories. So speaking of exciting, I think it's a perfect transition. Now we talked a lot about the Mets. Let's see. Oh, we're lagging. Oh, I apologize, everybody. Apparently we were having a lag issue. That is probably my fault more than anyone else's. So I apologize in advance for that, everybody. Let me see if I can delete some tabs, if this will help at all. If not, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. We are an hour into the live show, but let's continue to break this down because we got to talk about these prospects. We got to talk a bit more about Brandon Sproat. So everybody in the live show, if you guys could let me know if we're still lagging or not, that would be greatly appreciated. It's freezing every 5 seconds again. Let me know in the chat, guys.
Almost all my tabs. I'm almost tabless.
We're almost there. We're so close. Let's see. I did close some tabs. I literally just did that. Dave says, Tower, don't forget Mauricio next year. Can't wait to see him back. Second base, maybe. We love Ronnie Mauricio, for sure. For those that don't know, I can tell you in confidence, literally players within the Mets organization heading into spring training, we're expecting Ronnie Mauricio to be the third baseman to begin the season. Like, it was his job to lose early on. Yes, and that comes with confidence, as I say that. So for Mauricio to now be out the entire year and to see how much has changed at the hot corner, yes, you have to wonder if that second base position will be the destination for him. Maybe sometime at DH next year, depending on what the Mets do there. Obviously, JD Martinez is just on a one-year deal. I'd love to bring him back, but I can understand if the Mets don't go down that route. He's not getting any younger, and with JDM as great as he is, I also understand that guys like him are ticking time bombs where they will fall off. It's just a matter of when. Thankfully, it hasn't happened yet for this Mets team. I think we're all good now in the show, everybody. Criffer says, smooth, okay. Not lagging, awesome. Let's talk about these prospects. Doing the little tab. I love it. So we saw a very exciting, not report today, but just an update on the MLB Top 100 prospect rankings per MLB Pipeline. And I know, James, I actually want to start by asking, how much stock do you personally put into MLB Pipeline versus other prospect rankings? Like, which ones mean the most to you from a fan perspective, and why? I know you have your own prospect rankings. We all do, naturally, but I'm just curious, who do you trust the most?
It's a hard. I always had a bone to pick with Pipeline because they were always the most trusted source for people on the internet. They always had the best UI. They were free to view, which a lot of them are not. I know Baseball America and Baseball Prospectus are not free to view their list, but Pipeline was always the least frequent updater. And I think the biggest part about prospect analysis is that things just change quickly. Like, you have to trust your scouting reports, and you have to maintain your analysis despite like small spurts of bad play. But there's just drafted last year. It's a little transition, talk about Brandon Sproat soon, that you just didn't see before, and they shouldn't even be on the list. I feel like a lot of times prospect rankers, I don't know, I always use a combination of them. Like, I'll look at everything, especially now Pipeline's updating more frequently. But I love Baseball America. Matt Eddy, friend of the pod, he's a great guy. Baseball Prospectus is great too, but sometimes just financially in life, I cut my subscription and I go back to it, and I cut it and I go back to it. Fangraphs is my favorite consistently because I think Eric Longenhagen does great in determining real Major League Baseball player value, and he's really good at making very succinct descriptions of the kind of player things are going to be, and they're free. But Pipeline is definitely the best compiler. Pipeline has the best user interface. Pipeline's the prettiest one of all of them, and it has the best compilations of 30 prospects for per system that comes out every summer too. So there's a use for all of them. It's hard to pick one over the other. If it was their gun to my head, I would probably pick Fangraphs. That's one I've used the most in my life. But there's always a use for every single ranker. You should always be taking as many viewpoints as you can.
Yeah, for me personally, I usually utilize MLB Pipeline. I honestly don't do a lot unless I'm referencing, say, the Mets just made a trade for a top prospect, so I'm seeing or they're ranking the top 100 there. Baseball America, I use the most. I would say that isn't MLB related. Baseball Prospectus, I don't utilize nearly enough, and I need to because I know that a lot of great information comes out from them. Fangraphs I use all the time, but I'd be lying if I said that I use them for my prospect coverage in any way, shape, or form. It's a crazy thing. On-field ready talent that are not just all grizzled WAP 100 before you know it. Brandon Sproat, who has fallen off a little bit in the rankings this year, but I'm curious if there's anything more to be had there. I know Michael Mayer of Mesmerized tweeted about that earlier. I also apologize, folks. Okay, we're having a lag issue. Fantastic. Right. So running highlights anymore. What's going on there? No, it's not. It's not a new PC issue. Big Me Pete. That's the thing. This is a fairly new computer too. It just, unfortunately, one of those nights. You guys got to understand just how much runs with what I do. It's like a billion things.
Literally exactly when he said that, I opened a big Baseball Savant search. I was trying to get some minor league data, so I just canceled. I got the stat memorized, and we're good.
Okay, there you go. Let's see if we can get ourselves unfrozen here before we do anything. What the hell was Tim Welsh saying? Great member. He just said something completely outlandish in the chat that I have no comment on whatsoever. The lag's making it unwatchable. I apologize, everybody. Let's see if the lag is stopping, if it's persisting. Let's see. Let me know in the chat, everybody. Are we still lagging or not?
Every tab is gone.
It appears that we're not lagging.
I'm tabless.
Let's see. I think we're good now. I think that was the issue. Because everything seems to look fine from what I'm seeing on YouTube at the moment.
All right, that's good. Sorry, guys.
Good? Okay. All right, we're going to try this again. Okay, guys, so we're talking about, obviously, the top 100 prospects for the Mets. Brandon Sproat comes in at 98. Very exciting. We're going to get into in a second. Luis Angel Acuna is ranked 93rd. Ryan Clifford is ranked 72nd. 40th is Drew Gilbert, who's missed the majority of the year with injury with a torn hamstring, unfortunately. Christian Scott, who takes the mound for the Mets tomorrow, towing that rubber out of the 39th spot. And at 31, a man who unfortunately is not going to play anything this season because of his unfortunate injuries to his wrist, Mr. Jet Williams. So starting off from the top, I know you got a lot to say about Brandon. So outside of the numbers you were throwing out earlier while we were having our stream hiccups, enlighten Mets fans in simple terms why we should be so excited the way that you are about Brandon Sproat and his future in the Mets organization.
Yeah, just in case we got some new people in the stream, I'll throw the same stats. But basically, guys, we have a very advanced starting pitcher who's very, very ready for the major leagues. He's doing things in minor leagues right now that almost no other pitchers are doing. And it starts with his repertoire, the fact that he can command a fastball, a changeup, a curveball, and a slider. It's mostly the fastball, the curveball, and the changeup. The fastball has gotten to 101.5 miles an hour max velocity. That is simply putridly disgusting. And that means that he can sit about 98, 97 miles an hour. And that's not the same. He can stay there, and that's the lead velocity, and that's a great place to be for a pitcher. And then the fact that he can mix in the curveball, the changeup, and even the slider against hitters. Double A hitters are not used to seeing things like this. And that's how Sproat has just mothered through the level so far, a 28% strikeout rate, 6% walk rate. Incredible stuff after coming from Brookfield for 4 pitches from someone that was only drafted last year, also drafted twice by the Mets, seemingly very highly coveted by this organization. It's just, he's burning through right now. I think it's a very, 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 very slim chance that he gets a shot at the majors this year. But this is the Christian Scott schedule from last year, where it seems like he's just going to dominate for a year. And if he continues to dominate until he gets to next May, there's almost going to be no way to keep him out of the rotation. And another really cool thing, he was invited to the Futures game today. So he's going to be playing in the MLB Futures game during All-Star weekend in 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks from this weekend, maybe a week from this weekend. But it's just very high times for Brandon Sproat right now. And the fact that he's getting this national appeal for a stupid bit that I started with the Mets Stuff podcast in the winter, that he was going to be a top 100 prospect, mostly just because of how hard he threw that fastball. And the fact that he had a changeup and a curveball that he could command, so he could get batters on both sides of the plate out. It's beautiful to watch this. It's beautiful to see the Mets pitching lab produce what could be another high-end starting pitcher. It's such a sign of organizational health that this guy went from the draft to the upper minors in less than a calendar year, and he's almost already ready for the major leagues. It's so beautiful.
So unfortunately, we did have a lag again, but I think the audio is still going through. So as long as the audio is still going through, then we're fantastic. Again, to really touch on Brandon Sproat, my final thoughts here is, yeah, truthfully, I did not have a lot of knowledge about him heading into the season because I just simply don't usually deep dive, especially, early pitching prospects before they even hit the AA level to begin a season. Once we get to Rumble Ponies and beyond is where I start to have more of an eye on them. So to see Sproat again dominate the way that he did, the way he's been so fantastic now with the Rumble Ponies this season, just had a big outing recently as well. Sproat is one of these guys that with the arm alone, with that velocity, that can play at the major league level. The Mets are just going to make sure that they're not going to rush anything with him, rightfully so. But definitely a guy we can see impact this rotation as soon as next season, which will definitely go in hand with their rotation makeup for sure. So my quick question for you on Brandon Sproat is you highlighted not only the fastball, which is disastrously touching the high 90s, but a established curveball and changeup. Do you know where his changeup specifically rates right now on either Stuff Plus or just in general? Like, how is it looking across the league there? I understand he probably limited on the data you get with him right now where he's ranked in the minor leagues, but do you have, any idea as to exactly how legit that changeup is at this point in his career?
It's incredibly legit. That was his leading pitch in college. And there's sadly not much data on it because we only get this advanced data in low A and triple A, like I said before. But I know it has about a 12 to 13 mile an hour difference, maybe about 10 now with his fastball, and just a lot of nasty arm side run. So that's a pitch that's really, really useful for him against left-handed batters, which is usually one of the big hurdles that pitching prospects need to get across. You develop more pitches so you can get batters out in general, but batters from both sides of the plate. So the fact that Sproat has this changeup that runs away from left-handed batters and the curveball that moves mostly straight up and down, has a little bit of arm side action with it, but it's mostly straight up and down pitch. Those are both weapons against left-handed batters. And then the slider works with the curveball and the fastball, and the changeup sparingly, not as much, but against righties. So he can get guys on both sides of the plate out, and he could give a very advanced feel of pitchers in Double A, which again is why he's dominating that level. But no Stuff Plus, nothing like that. But a nice big gap in velocity and plus movement on that changeup, and extreme comfortability in throwing it, which is probably the most important thing.
So definitely ahead of the game for like where he ranks among other respective, starting pitchers, prospect rankings in the same realm of Double A especially. So that's damn exciting. Again, Sproat quite literally, with the stuff he has alone from everything that I've seen from him this season, he easily could be one of these guys that has ace caliber potential in this rotation. Not to put the pressure on his shoulders, but given the kind of low bar us Mets fans have right now, outside of Kodai Senga and Christian Scott, of course, is there. Scott, Sproat, these guys look like the future of this rotation. Blade Tidwell is trying to get that walk rate down and still establish himself. Obviously, we see at the AAA level, he's fluctuated on and off quite a bit. I know that some people, of course, have quite a bit of hype in the Cowboy himself and Mr. Nolan McLean. We have Tyler Stewart, a great outing yesterday, too. So I guess if I have another pitching question for you, and I do here, James, outside of Brandon Sproat, who stands out the most to you? Is it going to be Jonathan? I feel like it's going to be Jonathan.
It's 100% Jonathan.
Yeah.
I'm starting to really love Jonathan. Jonathan had a tough go of it when he moved from low A St. Lucie to high A Brooklyn about a month and a half ago, when he had a disaster outing where I think he got knocked out in the first inning, gave it about 7 runs. But since that happened, He has made, I'm trying to find my notes here. He's made 5 starts. He's gotten 26 innings. He has 38 strikeouts, 36 strikeouts. And his ERA has dropped like well below 3. And I think it's only 8, doing some counting here, 10 walks total. So he's someone who still walks a lot of batters. And the big thing with Jonah Tong is that he's still really trying to develop a third pitch that works in between a fastball that's really unique from the arm angle he throws at that. He gets so high up in his release point, if you guys can see on YouTube, that they almost say he releases his fastball like over his left ear. Like that's how straight up and down his fastball releases. That helps him to get good vertical action, backspin that fastball to go up on hitters. And that helps his really nasty hammer curveball go down on hitters. But he's looking for a pitch to go in between those. Probably a cutter, maybe a tighter slider, but the things that he's doing in low A right now statistically put him as one of the most exciting low minors pitching prospects in the league. And if he has the stuff to back it up, and he's still a young kid, he's only 21 years old, so he's going to probably get a little bigger, a little stronger too. But he's an outlier prospect because of how good those two pitches are and just how many batters he keeps striking out in the lower minors. It's a hard thing to ignore. And I think he's someone that hopefully next year he could be where Sproat is now, and he sneaks into the back end of these top 100 lists.
Yeah, Ton has come out of nowhere to start this season. He obviously was dominating Port St. Lucie, gets the call up, he moves up a league there, and obviously has an adjustment period. Had a really sharp start his last time out there, and that fastball is very lively, as you mentioned. I think a cutter would have worked really well for him, especially against those righty batters. I think it makes a lot of sense. So it'll be interesting to see how he really fine-tunes that arsenal, but still at the young age of 20 right now. We got Jonah Ton doing Jonah Ton things, Brandon Sproat doing Brandon Sproat things. Dave with the donation in the chat says Sproat the GOAT with the GOAT emoji. Thank you for that. I love it. And when we look at the other guys here on the list, I'm not going to go one by one with them. Luis Angel Acuna is a guy we expect to be with the Mets at some way this season. Maybe it's going to be very soon. I'm not exactly sure when, but Acuna definitely, I think, deserves an opportunity. Not necessarily as dire as maybe what it was needed a month ago when nothing was going right for this Mets team outside of Jeff McNeil, but certainly an opportunity I think is deserving at some point this season. Ryan Clifford, I'm not sure how you feel about him, James, but he is one of my favorite Mets prospects. He gives me so much Kyle Schwarber vibes, it's not even funny. Obviously goes in hand with the production he's had this year, basically hitting around the Mendoza line, but over 800 or close to 900 OPS, depending on the bombs he's hitting. But of course, command first base, in which, you know, when you think about first base and you think about the future of Pete Alonso, these are just some things that obviously David Stearns is going to be pondering and considering as we head into the offseason. He can play the corner outfield. I want to know your thoughts here on Ryan Clifford. Drew Gilbert, we're all very excited about him. We think he's a beyond established Mets prospect that will impact this team once he's healthy and right. Jet Williams, I think same applies to a degree there. Great contact hitting, ability to get on base. Kristen Scott, we will wrap up our show with. But Ryan Clifford, what are your main thoughts about him?
I like Clifford. The Schwarber comparison is hilarious. I think Clifford must be at least 6 or 7 inches taller than Kyle Schwarber. So it
doesn't matter. It feels the same, though.
Yeah. But Clifford's fun. Clifford's doing a weird thing right now in the minors. He's done it all year where there's an extreme passivity in his approach. He has been walking over 20% of the time this year between Brooklyn and Binghamton and striking out almost 30% of the time, which is definitely not great. You never want to have those two numbers that close to 50%. But while he's doing that, he keeps hitting home runs. There's a weird thing happening in Binghamton. This is as of play Sunday, because those were the notes I had for the last episode of Mets Up. We do prospect reports usually every week there. In Binghamton, 9 home runs, 8 doubles, 3 singles. I don't know how to make that make sense. And he has a 175 batting average and 838 OPS. I think he actually might have his 10th home run since I made those notes, but it's strange.
I just said Danners, baby. That's literally Ryan Clifford.
It's like, I wonder if that's a coaching cue. It's interesting that I see Pipeline keep Clifford so high in their rankings. I think he's dropped a little bit out of Prospectus and Baseball America, and I don't think he's ever touched top 100 in Fangraphs, but you don't walk rate in the minor leagues doesn't translate as well to the major leagues as strikeouts do in the minor leagues. So seeing a high strikeout and a high walk, that probably just means he's a high strikeout guy. So something that Clifford's going to have to do to make his bat play in an elite way at the next level is find a way to cut those strikeouts. And he's only been at Double A for a few weeks now. I don't think even a month yet. So that could definitely happen with comfortability. And he's still 20 years old. He's turning 21 at the end of the month. If things went the way they probably would have gone for him, he would be just finished his sophomore year at Vanderbilt. Would have been a very different vibe for Ryan Clifford. He probably would have been approaching a season where he would have been expected to be a first-round pick in the Major League Draft. Rather than that, he's already in the upper minors in the Mets system. So still very positive on Clifford, but want to see where that approach winds up. Because right now it's extreme and a little bit weird.
Yeah, he's been bizarre thus far, and that's, again, why I threw out the Schwarber mention just on the baseline numbers alone, because Kyle is so funny to evaluate as a hitter himself, yet he's beyond effective. He's been having a great year that we know for the Phillies here. Wish him speedy recovery, even though I hate those Phillies, and I do. But Ryan Clifford, he's a guy we're going to see how he blossoms. They have him as ETA of 2026, but with that power alone, wouldn't shock me if he is given the call at some point in the second half of next season. Should he really fine-tune, of course, get that contact ability a little bit up, of course, get those reps. If he touches Syracuse before the end of the season as well, that certainly helps his case in that regard. But before we wrap up the show, I want to ask you, what do you expect from Christian Scott for the remainder of the season, assuming that he's a mainstay now in this rotation finally? And I want to know your prediction on his final line, because I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't even second guess anything. 5.2 innings of 3 runs, 2 earned, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts at around, we'll go with 96 pitches. That is my Christian Scott final line, and hopefully a victory tomorrow. So let me hear yours.
3 runs, 2 earned. Who made the error?
Who made the error? Oh, that's a good question. Are we facing a righty or a lefty tomorrow?
We're facing it's tomorrow Parker or Irvin. I forgot. I can't remember right now. One of them's a righty, one's a lefty.
Okay, let's see here.
Double check it.
Tomorrow we got Southpaw Parker. Okay, so I'm not going to go with what I initially was thinking. For error-wise, we are going to go with Mark Vientos.
Okay, Mark, that's fair. I mean, that's probably the most likely guy to possibly make an error. But I think we're going to have 6 1/3, 7 strikeouts, 1 earned run, 0 walks, 6 hits, and he does come out of the game similar 96 pitches. I love Christian Scott. If anybody listens to the Mets stuff, I've been gushing about Christian Scott for a calendar year now. I rarely have seen pitching prospects like him come through the minors while at the same time learning a bunch of new pitches, striking out a bunch of guys out, and not walking literally anybody. He had the lowest or the second lowest walk rate among all qualified minor leaguers.
He just pounds the zone like a mofo.
That's what I'm saying. There's no fear. There's no fear. Here's my fastball. I want to see if you can fucking hit it. And that's kind of the attitude I love to see from a potential frontline, at least midline starting pitcher. I love Scott. The only thing that's going to stop Christian Scott this year is his innings limit. And the fact he's already up to about 60 or 70 this year, he's probably not getting higher than 125, I want to say, loosely, depending on how difficult those innings are. Apparently, the Mets might have been tracking his pitches rather than his innings, which is a much more futuristic way to concern yourself with workload. So hopefully it's something they're doing. But we probably only have 8 to 10 starts of Christian Scott rest of the way. So everyone got to sit down. You got to watch him. You got to enjoy every single one you possibly get, because he's probably the highest ceiling starting pitcher the Mets have on their rotation right now.
And that's saying a lot after hearing you rave as much as you do about a guy like Brandon Sproat especially. So for Scott to still be at the top of that list is definitely notable. And we saw his brilliance, of course, with that first start there against the Tampa Bay Rays. Florida native, took care of business. Unfortunately, that's when the Mets were the miserable Mets there in May, and they couldn't do anything for him. He was getting some Jake treatment that we saw in a couple starts this year. The one Christian Scott start that I saw in person was the last time that I saw you in person was at Citi Field when the Mets decided not to get their first hit until JD Martinez with a 2-out bomb. Absolutely ridiculous. Can't get over how much of a shit show of a game that was. But we love Christian Scott. We've been dying and calling for him back in this rotation as soon as humanly possible. I understood to a degree why the Mets made their decision initially. However, this felt like it was long overdue to have Scott back in here in the thick of things. So very happy to see him get the start tomorrow. Hopefully he can lead the Mets to a victory. And did you give me your final line prediction, or are you going to give me it now?
Yeah, I gave it to you. 6 1/3, 6 hits, 7 strikeouts, no walks, 1 earned run.
Okay, 7 strikeouts, no walks, 1 earned run. I like that. Those are good predictions, everybody. Let us know your Christian Scott predictions in the comments down below, especially for my replay viewers. Sanders says he's going to strike out 12 tomorrow. Sign me the hell up. Hammer the over, whatever sportsbook you guys want to use, cough, cough, bet US. But guys, I think that is going to do it now for the live show. I would like to first thank each and every one of you that chimed in live. We have roughly 1,800 concurrent viewers between YouTube and Twitter, so happy to have all you amazing Mets fans in here. James, always a pleasure, my man. Before I let you go, please let everyone know where they can find you, and if you have anything new coming up with your personal work or with Mets stuff.
Yeah, everybody follow me on the right there, James_Shiano. My Twitter is like 80% Mets and 80% Mets, 10% memes, and 10% I've been doing these big, fat, comprehensive Major League Baseball threads like every
very
couple
good
of
threads.
weeks.
They're popping off.
Yeah, I've had a couple get millions of impressions last few months, which is amazing.
Yep.
The most recent one's pinned to my profile now. If you guys want to pin through it, and a little secret for you guys in the chat here, I keep doing this thing where I purposely leave out one team to piss off a fan base. And the last one was the Phillies, and it was so funny because I said the MLB season's half over, and this was happened to. These are the most fun stories from the first half, and I didn't mention the Phillies once, besides for Christopher Sanchez's ground ball rate, and their fans got so mad at me. They ate the cheese, and they gave me a lot of impressions. It was great. So I'm going to do another one. This Monday is the plan. I really want to get it done before 4th of July weekend. Probably just highlighting all the craziest, most fun, wildest relievers in Major League Baseball. So keep a lookout for that.
I will definitely be there. Will any of the relievers that you'll be discussing potential trade targets for teams come the deadline?
Yeah, maybe I'll actually use that as one of the points in the thread, most fun trade targets. Because I'm going to talk about, of course, like Mason Miller in his own, because he's just such a freak of nature. But I'll probably do one. It's a good idea, Ward. You get the content brain of potential relievers to be moved.
Awesome. Yeah, I already got I was just making up today different types of, trade opportunities I want to talk about with the Mets this month. Not only like reliever targets among others, but I keep seesawing on the reliever front just because I really don't know how much or how little David's going to go in on that front. With these,
he's good. He's going to get a reliever, but it's not going to be one that everybody's super aware of. That like
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no David Robertson reunion. I'm sorry, Mets fans. I don't think it's going to happen. Like, those clear, bigger names that we know that have been established in the league, I agree. I don't see it happening. I think it's going to be an arm that surprises some people, or maybe even an arm that you kind of bought low on, but is controllable still, and has plenty high upside that you just need to change the scenery because we know the Mets actually have a pitching lab now that they're working with, and David Stearns is doing great things with this bullpen configuration. A great example I think of, when I think of just really getting the best out of some relievers, from one point to the next, is you see the LA Angels just do such a fantastic job on wasting talent. So Raiso Iglesias, after they signed him to that contract and he had an inflated year, they traded the Braves. He becomes unhittable for like the next year plus, obviously. Similarly, coming from the Angels now with the Braves, Ronaldo Lopez being stretched from a reliever to a starter, just kind of showing you how some organizations with better information and obviously clearly better help there on getting the best out of your pitchers. We're seeing that full-fledged. The Mets are going to continue to become one of those organizations, and it's exciting to have a guy at the helm of David Stearns who quite literally thrives off of this type of thing, with really not only building a strong pen, but having a great foundation for your pitching staff, for really having it be as interchangeable as possible throughout the 162. I love the stubbornness. I love that a lot of guys aren't a lock, and it's kind of far from it. As long as it leads to the Mets having success, that's truthfully all I care about.
That's it. That's all we want, baby. Just win.
Just win, baby. All right, that is James Shiano. Make sure to check him out on socials. And that's the podcast. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. This is the latest Metropolitan post-game segment, so hit that like and subscribe on your way out. Thank you guys all so much. We'll have James on in the near future, along with his fellow co-host that was in the chat earlier, our great friend, Giraffe Neck Mark. Shout out my man, Anthony Rivera at the Subway to Shape podcast. Saw him in the chat earlier. Hope he's doing well. Thank you guys all so much for watching.